If you look at the radar maps over the Pacific Ocean right now, you will see something that should terrify every economic strategist in the White House. It isn't a fleet of warships. It isn't a weather system. It is a line of cargo ships miles long leaving the port of Vancouver. For decades, those ships filled with the highest quality wheat in the world would have been coordinating with American markets. They would be part of a North American food system that kept prices stable and shelves stocked from Minneapolis to Miami. But today, they aren't looking south. They are heading west, straight to Shanghai. Donald Trump thought he could corner Canada. He thought he could hold the Canadian harvest hostage to force a political concession. He gambled that Mark Carney would fold under the pressure of American protectionism. He was wrong. Carney didn't blink. He didn't beg. He simply picked up the phone, called the one buyer Trump fears the most, and signed away the surplus that keeps the American Midwest competitive. Trump wanted a trade war. Carney just redefined the battlefield. And while Washington is still trying to figure out what happened, the price of bread is already moving. In the next 40 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how this deal went down, why the U.S. farming lobby is screaming for help, and why this might be the moment the United States lost its grip on the global food supply forever. You are watching history shift, and it's happening fast. Here is the simple reality of what happened in the last 48 hours. On Tuesday, President Trump announced a new, aggressive tariff strategy targeting Canadian agriculture. He called it America First Farming. The idea was simple, or at least simple-minded. He wanted to slap a 25% tariff on Canadian grain entering the U.S. to protect American farmers. He thought this would force Ottawa to come to the table on his terms regarding NATO, spending, and border control. It was a classic Trump leverage play. Squeeze them until they scream. But he forgot one thing. Grain is a global commodity, and Canada feeds the world. Instead of flying to Washington to plead for an exemption, Prime Minister Mark Carney stayed in Ottawa. He held a video summit with trade officials from China. And within 12 hours, they announced the Pacific Grain Security Pact. The details are staggering. Canada has agreed to redirect 40% of its exportable wheat and durum supply that usually flows into the North American integrated market directly to Chinese state reserves. China gets food security. Canada gets a guaranteed buyer at a premium price, completely bypassing the US dollar and US tariffs. In the United States, the US gets cut out of the loop. This isn't just a sale. This is a rupture. For the last 30 years, the US and Canada effectively functioned as one giant breadbasket. We baked bread together. We processed pasta together. Our supply chains were linked. Trump just took a sledgehammer to that link. And Carney, realizing the U.S. is no longer a reliable partner, decided to sell the sledgehammer to someone else. The shockwaves were immediate. Chicago wheat futures went haywire. American millers who rely on high-protein Canadian wheat to blend with U.S. crops are now scrambling to find supply. They can't just buy American because the specific grades they need for high-quality flour come from the Canadian prairies. Trump tried to bully a neighbor. He ended up strengthening his biggest rival. And now, you are going to pay for it at the grocery store. You might be thinking, is it really that bad? Isn't this just political theater? Let me show you the receipts, because when you look at the hard data, the picture is much darker than what they're telling you on cable news. Receipt number 1, the Chicago Board of Trade. Look at this chart from Wednesday morning. The moment the news of the Carney-China Pact leaked, look at the spike in hard red spring wheat. That is the premium stuff. That is what Canada grows better than anyone. The price jumped 12% in 40 minutes. Why? Because the market knows the supply just vanished. The traders in Chicago aren't political partisans. They don't care about MAGA hats or liberal pins. They care about supply and demand. And they know that if Canada is sending its best crop to Beijing, American bakeries are going to have to bid against the Chinese government to get flour. And the Chinese government has deeper pockets. Receipt number 2, the Trump tweet. 3 hours after the deal was signed, Trump posted this. Look at the timestamp. 2:14 a.m. Canada is being very unfair, selling our wheat to China. We will put huge sanctions on them. Carney is weak. Read that closely. Our wheat. He still thinks Canadian resources belong to America by default. He thinks he owns the harvest of a sovereign nation. But notice the tone. It's not confident. It's frantic. He's threatening sanctions on a deal that is already signed. He's trying to close the barn door after the horse has already flown to Shanghai first class. Receipt number 3, the Port of Vancouver data. We pulled the shipping manifest from the Port of Vancouver for the last week. Usually you see a mix of destinations. U.S. West Coast, Mexico, Japan. Look at the new contracts. QFQO, that is the China National Cereals, Oils, and Foodstuffs Corporation. It's a state-owned giant. The volume booked for the next 6 months exceeds the total volume of the last 3 years combined. This isn't a temporary fix. You don't sign contracts like this for a week. This is infrastructure. Canada is reorienting its entire logistics chain to face west, away from the south. They are booking rail cars, reserving terminals, and signing insurance deals that lock this in for years. Receipt. Number 4, the panic in North Dakota. This is the one that really hurts. We have reports from local grower associations in North Dakota and Montana. These are American farmers. These are Trump voters. And they are panicking. Why? Because the U.S. and Canadian grain markets are linked. Often American grain moves north for processing, and Canadian grain moves south. It's a fluid border. If Canada locks its supply into a closed loop with China, the efficiency of the whole system collapses. The North Dakota Grain Growers Association issued a statement yesterday saying, "This trade war is cutting our throat. We need stability, not tariffs." They know what's coming. Retaliation. If Canada isn't buying U.S. processing services and the U.S. can't buy Canadian raw product, the American processing plants shut down. Jobs disappear in the Midwest. These aren't theories. These are facts on the ground happening right now, while the White House pretends everything is under control. So why is this happening? How did a president who prides himself on being the greatest deal maker lose the easiest trade relationship on the planet? It's because Trump is fighting a 1980s war in a 2026 world. He operates on a simple, outdated heuristic. The United States is the biggest market. Therefore, everyone must bow down to sell to us. He thinks market access is the ultimate weapon. He thinks he can hold the U.S. consumer hostage and force other countries to do his bidding. That worked when the U.S. was the only game in town. But look around. It's not 1990 anymore. Trump is reactive. He wakes up, sees a segment on TV, gets angry, and fires off a tariff threat. There is no strategy. There is no long-term planning. It is impulse governance. He creates instability. And if there is one thing global markets hate, if there is one thing farmers hate, it is instability. You can't plant a crop that takes 6 months to grow if you don't know. If the president is going to ban your buyer on Twitter tomorrow. So, the world is adapting. They are de-risking from the United States. When Trump threatened Canada this week, he assumed Canada had nowhere else to go. He looked at the map and saw Canada physically attached to the U.S. He thought, they have to use our trains. They have to use our ports. He forgot that the ocean connects Canada to everyone. By being so volatile, Trump has forced his allies to find alternatives. He has made the United States a liability. Every time he threatens a tariff, a boardroom in Toronto, or London, or Berlin, or Tokyo starts looking for a Plan B. And this week, Canada activated Plan B. Trump is losing control because he relies on fear. But fear only works if you don't have options. Once you have options, the fear evaporates. Canada realized that a deal with China, as complicated and difficult as that relationship can be, offers something Trump cannot. A contract, a signed piece of paper that says we will buy X amount for years. Trump doesn't do contracts. He does whims. And you can't build an economy on the whims of one man. Now Trump is trapped. If he escalates further, he hurts American farmers more. If he backs down, he looks weak. He has painted himself into a corner with his own rhetoric. He wanted to look tough, but he just made America look unreliable. And the rest of the world is watching. Do you think Europe isn't taking notes? Do you think Mexico isn't watching this wheat deal and thinking, maybe we should sell our avocados to Asia too? Trump is accelerating the very thing he promised to stop, the decline of American economic dominance. He's doing it by pushing his friends into the arms of his enemies. Now, look at the other side of the border. Look at Mark Carney. The contrast couldn't be more violent. While Trump is throwing plates at the wall, Carney is quietly rearranging the furniture. Carney isn't a populist screamer. He's a central banker. He's a technocrat. He understands the plumbing of the global economy better than perhaps any leader on the world stage today. He knows you don't fight a trade war with slogans. You fight it with supply chains. Carney's move to pivot to China wasn't an emotional reaction. It wasn't a temper tantrum. It was a calculated, strategic diversification. He knows that relying on the U.S. for 75% of Canada's trade is a national security risk as long as Trump is in power. He knows that to protect Canadian sovereignty, he needs leverage. And what is the ultimate leverage? Food. By locking up the wheat market with China, Carney didn't just secure a sale, he secured a shield. He signaled to Washington, "We don't need you as much as you think we do." Notice how he did it. He didn't hold a raucous rally. He didn't insult the American people. He simply issued a press release about diversifying global partnerships. He framed it as a business decision. This makes it impossible for Trump to attack him effectively. How do you attack a guy for selling grain? It's capitalism. It's the free market. Trump loves the free market, right? Carney is using Trump's own ideology against him. This also shows Carney's ability to build coalitions. He didn't just talk to China. Sources say he's also back-channeling with the UK and the EU, coordinating a resilience strategy against American protectionism. He is positioning Canada not as a terrified little brother, but as a global broker, a hub. This is the difference between a politician who plays to the crowd and a leader who plays the board. Trump wants applause. Carney wants results. And the result is that for the first time in a long time, the power dynamic has shifted north. Canada isn't asking for permission. They are making moves. And Carney's message is clear. If the U.S. wants to close its doors, Canada will simply open new ones. So what does this mean for you? Why should you care if some wheat goes to Shanghai instead of St. Louis? Because you eat. This isn't just high-level geopolitics. This hits your kitchen table. When the North American grain market fractures, efficiency dies, costs go up. Expect the price of flour, bread, pasta, and cereals to rise in the United States within the next quarter. Not because of inflation, but because of artificial scarcity created by this political fight. If American mills have to pay more to source inferior wheat or pay tariffs to get the Canadian stuff, they pass that cost to you. But it's bigger than groceries. This is a signal that the American era of trade is ending. For your entire life, you have lived in a world where the U.S. sat at the center of the table. We set the rules. We set the prices. That is over. If Canada, our closest neighbor, our brother in arms, our biggest trading partner, is willing to walk away and deal with our biggest rival because Washington is too toxic to do business with, then the system is broken. It means your job is less safe. If you work in manufacturing, logistics, or agriculture, your industry relies on cross-border flow. If that flow stops, your plant closes. It means the US dollar is a little less powerful today than it was yesterday. And it means that the safety net of having a friendly, resource-rich neighbor to the north is gone. We are turning a friend into a competitor. Imagine a world where Canada sells its oil to India, its wheat to China, and its minerals to Europe, leaving the U.S. isolated on its own continent. That is the world Trump is creating. And Carney is showing that it's not just a threat, It's a viable plan. This is a wake-up call. The insulation is gone. The decisions made in the Oval Office are now costing you money in real time. There was a moment yesterday that captured everything. While Trump was raging on social media, posting in all caps, reporters caught Mark Carney leaving the Parliament buildings in Ottawa. A reporter shouted, "Mr. Prime Minister, is this a message to President Trump?" Carney didn't stop walking. He didn't smile. He just turned his head slightly and said, "Farmers need customers, not lectures." And then he got in his car. That's it. That's the whole story. One man is giving lectures, the other is finding customers, and the world is following the man with the customers. Where does this go from here? We are entering dangerous territory. Scenario A, the escalation. This is the most likely path. Trump cannot let this slide. His ego won't allow it. He will likely announce a total ban on Canadian agriculture or threaten to close the border entirely. If he does that, we aren't just looking at a trade war, we are looking at a depression in the border states. Michigan, New York, Washington State, their economies will grind to a halt. We will see lineups at the border, shortages of goods, and a full-blown diplomatic crisis. Scenario B, the quiet retreat. Trump might realize he overplayed his hand. He might send advisors to quietly beg Canada to restore supply, offering some concession that he will disguise as a victory. But the damage is done. Canada has signed the contracts with China. Those ships aren't turning around. The market share is lost. Scenario C, the global realignment. This is the long game. Other countries see Canada's success and follow suit. Australia, Brazil, the EU, they all start forming bilateral pacts that exclude the US. The World Trade Organization becomes irrelevant. The US becomes an economic island. Carney knows this. He is betting that the US system is too chaotic to stop him. He is betting that by the time Washington gets its act together, the new trade routes will be set in concrete. And the scary part? He's probably right. This is the part where leaders usually calm it down. They pick up the red phone and de-escalate. But Trump doesn't do calm, and Carney isn't interested in talking anymore. We are watching a divorce. And right now, Canada is taking the bank account. The wheat fields of Saskatchewan are a long way from the White House. But the decision made there this week has just reshaped the world you live in. Trump pushed, Canada pivoted, and China took the prize. The question you need to ask yourself is this: can the United States afford to be this lonely? We are watching the cost of arrogance, and the bill is coming due. I want to know what you think. Is Carney a genius for protecting his country? Or is he playing with fire by getting in bed with China? And do you blame Trump for pushing him there? Let me know in the comments below. I read them all. And if you want to know what happens when the next shoe drops, because it will drop, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell. You need to see this coming before the headlines catch.